What's good? It's Fever. Today I want to talk a bit about MMORPGs, specifically Sandbox MMORPGs, and even more specifically, Black Desert Online and why it is and isn't a sandbox game. Now, my voice is a little bit meh, I'm feeling like crap. The only reason I'm really doing this is I offhandedly had said that Black Desert wasn't a sandbox game, and I got some really aggressive and really toxic shit in my private messaging. And so I kind of wanted to talk about this. It's a pretty interesting topic. So this is my struggle if you haven't heard me talk about MMORPGs. Labels are the devil. And over time, people start blurring what something is or what it means, then that gets accepted, and then that starts to get blurry. Like, literally doesn't mean literally anymore. In fact, literally somehow means both actually and virtually, two opposing things, and that's kind of the same reason why Black Desert isn't and is a sandbox game, because that label sandbox has had that same type of treatment. And in a big way, I feel it's because a lot of people that haven't put time into real sandbox games had their opinions or their experiences formed on games just with sandbox features. And if you imagine that a pure theme park game is a red circle and the pure sandbox game is a blue circle, a lot of what people think or have identified a sandbox as is just a red circle with a whole bunch of blue stripes, and they go, oh, well, there's more blue than red somehow, and so now that's a sandbox. And it's kind of crazy because even when you look online, the definitions that you can find, not only are they varied, but they are really weird. Like, the most popular ones boil down to a sandbox being an open world game, having non-linear progression, having lots of stuff to do, maybe even incentivizing roaming, and then it can trickle down into some really specific silly things like the inclusion of city-to-city trading, or not having set gear as some type of requirement. And this goes hand in hand with what forms people's opinions, experiences, first impressions with a title, because people group like stuff together. So if in a player's game experience, they play a whole bunch of games identified as a sandbox, to even if it's just their friends and there's no set gear and there's trading, well, they identify those things with the label. And so when they see those things, they go, oh, this is a sandbox. And what I have found really interesting is that Arcade came out a couple years ago. People were adamant that it be called a sand park as opposed to a sandbox, and yet now with Black Desert, which is arguably less sandbox, you don't hear that so much, and people are now adamant that it is a sandbox. It's just kind of funny how time is, and just time's fucked up, man. So I mentioned theme park because the best way to define a sandbox is to place it against a theme park game, and I think we can all agree that a theme park is a game that has a very developed way to play. It has many attractions or activities that you can mess around with, and the experience as a whole is on rails. It's as the developer intended. A sandbox is largely the opposite. The player develops the experience. The developer, in essence, creates a framework and a set of rules, and the content, the game, the features, the meat of a sandbox game are tools that the player can actively or passively use to shape their experience or interact with the game or with other players in emergent ways. And if that sounds vague, it is. And that's why it's so difficult to get a straight answer on what a sandbox literally means. And if you search online, people are like, sandboxes are a personal opinion. You have to make up your own personal definition. And to make it even more cloudy, there isn't a true 100% sandbox game that anybody can point to, because a certain level of structure, a certain level of developer intended experience is needed, especially to get people to grasp a game or its features, or even to introduce new stuff. But I guess if you had to boil it down, theme park versus sandbox is designed experience versus not designed experience. And it's very important not to go that extra step and say player designed or player driven. So in the case of Black Desert, if you take the game and you look at it against the theme park standards of like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV, what is actually different in the gameplay? Right? Like, people go, oh man, like, you can train and you can breed horses and that's awesome. Well, you can train and you can battle mini pets in World of Warcraft, but you can fish and you can build a fishing boat and you can head overseas and you can just get lost out there looking for hotspots. Alright, well, you can hop on your griffin and you can fly to some obscure island looking for fishing pools in World of Warcraft. Each activity in both games is just that. It's a self-contained activity. And sure, in Black Desert, you may never feel pressure to do any one thing. There may be more stuff to do than you'll ever be able to do. It might not even be dependent on your character level, or specific features may be more fleshed out than you're used to, but the gameplay itself is on rails. It's developer designed. Whether it's the first or the 30th time that you do pretty much anything in Black Desert, it's going to be the same. You can do whatever you want, but no more or less than traditional theme park titles. These activities also have no impact on the rest of the game or your experience past what you've been designed to experience, right? You could remove fishing from Black Desert, and the only thing that changes is that there's no fishing. It doesn't really impact anything in any real way. The player isn't given tools, they're given options, and that's very definitive of a theme park title. And in the case of Black Desert, there have actually been deliberate choices or changes that make the game less sandbox. And I want to point out here that this doesn't make Black Desert bad, and Black Desert never really branded itself, I don't believe, as like a new sandbox, the true sandbox, or anything like that. So anyway, the deliberate choices or changes that have made the game less sandbox, like no player trading, like set market board prices, like removing most risk, like making players barely able to interact with each other. I mean, in a large way, most people who play the game says that it feels like a single player game. To give the only real sandbox feature of Black Desert I can think of some shine, open world PvP is sandbox. It allows people to push others away from grinding spots. It allows control over game areas. You can control resources. It allows people to attack people they don't like. It allows punishment. It allows penalty. That's the additional game experience that is tagged on to just being able to kill another character in the game. If there was a method to, say, transfer guild funds from one guild to another, then that feature would snowball, and it would allow players to bribe guilds to go to war with other guilds. You could purchase like mercenaries or guilds that were like swords for hire. You could buy protection, or you can negotiate peace or stop people from attacking you, or maybe even for like the powerful guilds, they might demand tribute from other guilds or else go to war with them. Those type of features that create the trickle-down gameplay, that's what sandboxes are. It's not the act of being able to trade money that made it a sandbox. It's how it interacts with the other design decisions in the game to give non-designed for experiences. And the thing about sandbox design is the more freedom and the more features that are developed in that way to enable players and give players control, the more overlap the systems have, and the more systems impact another, and the more that this entire thing just kind of snowballs. So say for this PvP spiel, something that makes that PvP or region control important and valuable is the idea of risk. There are death penalties, so you just can't control it willy-nilly. You're risking being attacked, and the people who are going there, it's not just quite griefing. You literally feel kicked out because you don't want to lose anymore. And if you add in things like in-world housing or farming or controllable crafting or buildings with some type of reward or same type of like penalty where people can loot your crap or whatever, you're creating areas that have intrinsic value, which is why a lot of times when people talk about sandbox titles, they talk about in-world shaping and creating of the world because it creates value. But on the flip side, if you introduce something like channels in Black Desert, where it's literally like a server, like you can take your character into another server, you can take your ball and go home, and you have another instance of the world, you eliminate almost all of the value in the gameplay surrounding almost all of that PvP stuff I mentioned. And it's why in a lot of the more accepted sandbox games, you see not being able to change server, or you see just one giant server. Now, I want to talk briefly about the golden child of what this kind of like sandbox craze or this sand park craze is, and that's city-to-city trading. Because I swear to God, when I see people see that something has trading, their mind just goes straight to, oh, it must be a sandbox. And what actually makes this a sandbox feature is the way that items and inventory are dealt with, not the feature itself, right? In Black Desert, trading items is largely you buy them in one place, you walk or you ride your wagon or your donkey to another place, and you sell. It's an activity, it's a theme park activity. It's the same the first time as the 30th time. But in other games, when inventory is droppable or stealable or transportable, or it occupies real world space, or it's losable, then trading and moving items completely changes. Because imagine buying the item and instead of literally putting it in a wagon UI menu, you have to put it on a wagon in the world, or it's your friend's wagon, or it's some dude you're paying for a ride's wagon. And imagine that because it can be stolen, you decide to escort them in your sort of combat gear, or you hire protection, or you're constantly wary that this guy doesn't just like drive off with your shit and turn it in himself. Or maybe you're a pirate and you're looking to steal it, or whatever. Like, you can go further. The act of trading just allows all of this different type of gameplay to affect the game. And that's what makes it Sandbox, is that the trading is not just trading. It has all of these other various gameplay effects that sort of occur because of it. And the point really being that features on their own aren't enough to give the same experience in games that are designed differently, which is why even if you take EVE Online, the most widely accepted sandbox game, and you take their planetary interaction, you take their contract system, you take their wormholes and their incursions and their alliances and their scanning and their exploration and their skill queues and their jump clones and their scavenging and their gate camps, and you put that into another game, it isn't enough to make that game a sandbox unless the rest of it is designed in a way to enable the features to give off, the keyword here, emergent gameplay, unexpected gameplay. It's not about ticking a bunch of feature checkboxes. You can put as many blue stripes on a red circle and it's still a red circle underneath. And on the flip side, you can have a blue circle with red stripes and it's still, the design underneath is actually what matters. Like, it's wild to me because I'm seeing the term sandbox become almost synonymous with open world. I'm seeing the I can do whatever I want becoming a determining factor. Like, somehow if a game doesn't have some form of guide or guidance, that it changes the way the game's done. Like, it's just absolutely crazy to me. So the way that people use literally as figuratively, Black Desert is a sandbox, but not really. Until next time, this is Fever. Peace. So I'm recording this part after listening to the rant. It was a pretty lengthy rant, but to summarize, Black Desert is a theme park. It's going to give you the same specifically designed and intended experiences through the use of these activities that are going to be the same the first and the 30th time that you do them, that we all acknowledge is what is almost definitive of a theme park. You aren't going to run into surprises. The scope of the game is limited to the scope and the definition of the features. You don't have freedom. You don't have control. You have options. Mind you, you have a lot of options. And a Sandbox MMORPG is the opposite of all of that. You almost don't even need to define what a Sandbox MMORPG is, because I think it's kind of understood that a theme park and a sandbox are almost opposite sides of a spectrum, and Black Desert is sitting snug on one side of the spectrum. Mind you, it has features that appear in other sandbox games, but that doesn't make it a sandbox game. This time, for real. Until next time, this is Fever. Peace.